Hi guys, we all love executable jar files, especially with Spring Boot. So make jar, not war, but sometimes depending on your deployment circumstance, it's not always possible to make your jar file, or it's not actually always possible to run your application as a jar file. It's always possible to make one. So what I'm going to be showing you here is how you can create your Spring Boot application, and actually the deployment artifact that's going to produce is going to be a war file. So that war file can then be deployed into Tomcat, and then can be deployed into any other container. So I hope you guys enjoy this quick video, and I don't encourage it, but sometimes you have to use it depending on your circumstances, which I appreciate. So I hope you guys enjoy this video.
So today we are going to create a Spring Boot application, but instead of it generating a jar file, which is actually an executable jar file, what we want to do is create a traditional deployable war file. And what we can do is then take that war file and deploy that into a Tomcat server and run that. So the first thing we want to do is go and actually create a Spring project. So create a Spring starter project. And under packaging, you want to make sure that war is selected, not jar, war. So go ahead and click war. This is going to generate our boilerplate code for us and everything like that. I'm also going to bring in the web dependency, as I'm going to create a RESTful service. And click finish. Allow that to import and download any projects or any dependencies. And the first thing I'm going to do when it downloads that is delete the Java test classes. So that's any boilerplate code there. So I'm going to delete that. And now what I'm going to show you is the steps that SpringInitializer has automatically done for us to make this a war file. So you'll see that there's a war example application. That's our standard Spring Boot application. That's our main entry to our app. And you'll see it's spring application.run, and it's just everything is normal. I'm sure you've all seen my other tutorials. It's a bog standard Spring Boot class. The next class is more interesting. So it's a ServletInitializer, and it extends the SpringBootServletInitializer. And you see we override one method, which is configure. And what we're doing is actually providing our Spring application builder with our war example application. So what we're doing there is providing the application sources with our configuration class. So that's because we're using Spring Boot, it's the main configuration class. So this will allow us to make use of the Spring Framework's Servlet 3 support. So it'll allow us to configure our application really when it's launched by the servlet container. So the next thing it's done is, if you open up your POM, you'll see that it's automatically brought down our parent POM. So that's our Spring Boot starter parent. And if we have this starter parent, it allows us to just label our packaging as war. So traditionally that would have been, now we would usually make that jar, but we can automatically just change that to war. And the next thing we want to do is mark our SpringBoot-starter-tomcat as provided. So this will ensure that we don't have any collisions with classes or anything that collides between our actual server that we run our application on. So that's the real Tomcat server versus any classes we have in our class path from Tomcat. So this is going to basically exclude that dependency in our war file. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and create a Spring Boot class, which is going to be a RESTful service. So I'm going to go ahead and create one called war controller and click finish. And then I'm just going to dump a piece of code in that I wrote earlier. Click save, bring in any of your classes, save that. And now what we want to do is, instead of running that as a Spring Boot application, what we want to do is actually run that and run on server. We're going to select our Tomcat 8 server, and we're going to deploy our war example in there. So the program is going to it's going to generate a war file and now deploy that into Tomcat. So once it starts up, there we go. Now you'll see that it started on HTTP localhost port 8080, and we have our application name appended on to the end. So if I go ahead here and open up Google Chrome and type in the URL and go to that web service, you'll see that I'm actually hitting the service and everything's working fine. So that's great. But now what we want to do is actually change the application so it creates a jar file. So I'm going to show you the reverse. So if we go ahead and stop the application, the first thing we want to do is open up the POM file. We want to delete the scope of provided from Tomcat. You want to then change the packaging from war into jar. We're going to save that. We can then go ahead and delete the ServletInitializer class and perform a Maven update on that class, on the project. And then what we're going to do is select the war file, so war example application, run as, run on server, run as Spring Boot app. So now we're going to go ahead and run our Spring Boot application. And our application is started up. So if you go back here, now if we go to this URL, it should bring a 404 not found because it won't automatically add the application name on there. So you'll see 404. So what we want to actually do is delete the application name, and you should see the web service being hit now. So that's a subtle difference that I've seen quite a few people have had a few problems with, or thought their application wasn't working, but you know, it's just the understanding there that it changes by default. So I hope this tutorial was useful for you guys. Very short, very simple. This is all covered in traditional deployment in the Spring Boot documentation. There's also other support for supporting old servlet containers. So subscribe to the videos, my YouTube channel if you like these, and I'll keep on doing them. And I will see you next time.